Good afternoon, everyone. Let's imagine this. We're sitting in a lovely library. There's a fireplace behind us, crackling fire, and we are here with two brilliant executives to have a fireside chat. We have Rola Dagher, Global Channel Chief from Dell Technologies, and Mary Lou Mayer, Managing Partner, Quality and Risk, as well as Head of Global Inclusion and Diversity at KPMG. I'm delighted to be with these two very distinguished executives who really lead the journeys of inclusion within their organizations. So we're going to keep this conversation, colleagues, very casual, just as we would if we were sitting with a cup of coffee, hot chocolate, or other beverages beside a fire, and talk about inclusion and how, as executives, you have driven that within your organizations. We've heard from Yilmaz's presentation and his research, the critical role that middle managers play in driving inclusion. However, it's two pieces of a puzzle, right? You cannot really have successful inclusion without also executives helping to make that happen. So I would encourage, as you come to speak, to introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll launch us into our first question. So may I ask Mary Lou to start and just give us a little bit of your background, Mary Lou.
Great, thank you, and I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm a big fan of TRIAC, so I'm really excited to be here to share some thoughts and my story a bit. So I'm actually a small town farm girl that grew up north of Toronto and made my way to Bay Street and actually turned out to have a pretty good career. So I've been 38 years with KPMG in various roles, both in Canada and globally. And I am a happily married woman to my wife, Virginia, who is a PhD in psychology. So she keeps me straight when we talk about inclusion.
Lovely. And Rola, how about yourself?
That's awesome. So I come from a little farm town as well, Mary Lou, but that is far, far from Canada. So I come from Lebanon, a very, very small town that's all full of the Daggers family. I was born and raised into a family of 6 girls. My father tried and my parents really hard, no luck. And our tradition is always about, having a boy to carry the name of the family. I was actually married off at very, very young age, 15 years old, and I have 2 amazing kids. I'm a single mom, a very, very, very proud Lebanese and a grateful Canadian. My son, Michael, is 27 years old, and my daughter is the love of my life, is 32 years old. And I can't tell you, landing in Canada in 1989 was actually the moment of hope for me, because what Canada has brought for me and got me to where I am, from a bomb shelter to a C-suite in Canada and globally, it's something that makes all Lebanese proud and give them a lot of hope that if a small little town girl in Lebanon got to where I am, anyone can.
That's amazing. Well, we have one thing in common. I'm also not a Torontonian. I grew up in Thunder Bay. So while not a farm, it definitely was a bit remote, let's just say that, from Toronto. So colleagues, when we think about inclusion and the journey that we're all on, and it really is a journey, right? It's in some ways not a destination, but that's going to be my question. When do you know that you have an inclusive organization? When do you know that you have reached and succeeded in achieving inclusion?
I mean, I could start the conversation by saying, you have a diversity and inclusion organization when you become, #1 on the Great Place to Work. You become the Forbes top list of organization. You see the progress in the organization and the success of the people. And when an organization is successful is when they do not hire for color, for a religion, they hire for skills. They hire people that don't look like them. They hire people that are completely different in terms of their thought process, and they challenge them, because I hire people that are completely different than me, but they have the same value and drive and passion and purpose to go out there and make an impact.
Yeah, and I would just add that your people will tell you when you're on your journey in the right direction. So whether it's a people survey or whatever it is, they will let you know very clearly. And if you look at that data and you split that data between diverse groups, then you can really analyze whether you're making progress or it's just the majority that are doing well and happy. So you dig into your details, you can really figure out if you're doing a good job. And Rola's right, like the market will recognize you as well. And then, I mean, I'm an accountant, so I have to talk about the numbers. So
Yeah, please.
what does your executive team look like? What does your board look like? What does your pipeline to executive look like? Are they numbers that you'd be proud of to put out in the marketplace? That's when you know you're well on your journey.
So Mary Lou and Rola, can we just touch a little bit more on that about the cost of this is business sense and not just the right thing to do?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially in relationships. So it's like it's that intercultural education or knowledge that you need to have. I mean, sayings like "I don't see color" or "I treat everyone the way I would be treated," those are not good sayings anymore. You have to acknowledge and recognize that someone is different and you need to treat them the way they want to be treated. And it's hard work because it's much easier to run a business and treat everybody the same. But that's not what we're hired to do, and that's not what engages people and makes good business decisions. So that's where I see it as a business imperative.
But people don't leave companies. People leave because of their managers and because of people. And that's what pushes people out. And for me, as leaders, shame on us if we actually don't get out of our comfort zone and be comfortable of being uncomfortable and ensuring that learning is the fuel of our organization and people and culture success. Because what got us to where we are today will not get us where we need to be, because we have to unlearn. Because there's a lot of things that we've learned as leaders to do this. I've done this.
Rola, I love that point about unlearning. So if I think just to myself personally, I grew up in a small town. Everybody looked like me. We had one brown kid in our school for 8 years. And so I had to unlearn everything as I grew up in my career. And it can be done. And I think that's, people may get nervous about, this is the way I've always lived, or this is the way I grew up. Well, yeah, but you can learn, you can unlearn that and learn new. And I think that's critical.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, Mary Lou, to underpin what you said, having people unlearn saying, "I don't see color" would be helpful. The numbers of times I've heard that statement has been quite astounding. So as both of you colleagues know, TRIAC focuses on also immigrant inclusion in particular and helping immigrants, newcomers integrate into the GTA labor market. And so why do your organizations, both of you as executives in your organizations, have worked with TRIAC closely for years? Why do you care about immigrant talent and inclusion?
I could take it first. I could tell you I care about immigrants because I am the epitome of all immigrants. I came to this country as an immigrant, didn't speak a word of English. I escaped Lebanon during the war with my 10-month-old baby, pretty much, in most of my life in a bomb shelter. Immigrants make Canada what Canada is today. In every single position you're in, and I know, Mary Lou, you are the accountant with all the stats. I can give you so many stats about the immigrant success stories that we have in Canada. Immigrants bring a different perspective and different thought leaders to every single organization. I mentioned it earlier and I mention it to you today. If we hire people that look like us in every single situation, we will not get to where we need to be.
Well, it's hard to add to the lived experience that you have had on your being an immigrant yourself. But let's be honest. Like, Canada is not growing itself. We need immigration, and we need successful immigration in order for us to strive as a country, us as a business world, us at KPMG, however you want to define it, we need immigration in order to be successful. And it makes life more interesting.
So I'm going to move us a little bit more tightly into also some of the research. I think my colleague, Dr. Dinch, would be very upset if I didn't focus some of our conversation as it related to the great research that was done. How should executives really support encourage, hold folks accountable, middle managers, giving them that support to create that inclusive environment?
Well, I'll go first, Roll, if you don't mind. I found the research interesting because I do think we focus on the executives and leadership and showing the way, and then we rely on grassroots initiatives around our employee resource groups and that sort of thing. But there is this big chunk of people in the middle that actually touch our people every day. So they are so critical. And so I do think that you need to have, leadership, have the right strategy, have the right behaviors, but you really do need to get at that middle management. So you need to, whether it's through education, whether it's through being, the right person yourself when you're leading them, and recognizing and rewarding them for. And I want to make a clear point here. I think that recognition should be around inclusion and not necessarily just diversity, because you can hire up diversity and tick a box.
True.
But that's not getting to inclusion. That's not engaging your team.
Yeah, great points, Mary Lou. I have to tell you is leadership is not a position or just a title. Leadership is all about action. And the one word that I could use to answer your question is inspect. Inspect what you expect. And that the one thing is it starts from the top. So as Mary Lou said, it starts in the top, and the conversation needs to be sponsored by the executive team. However, it's the people that are making it happen. When I talk about double click, right? That skip level of people that, hey, we put these processes in place, but are they actually being executed on? How do we inspect the process? How do we measure the process? And how do we compensate and incent people, not just for diversity or inclusion? How do we actually incent people for an inclusive future for all, period, full stop? And when we talk about that, we have to continue to ensure that the middle management team is being inspected in ways where people in the field understand that there's accountability that's being measured every single day. And then ensuring that our people are listening, our managers are listening to understand, not listening to just criticize or listening to judge. And the other thing is make it more of a purpose, pride, passion approach where people can go and see the purpose of what they're doing by inspiring through that process and getting out of people's way to go out there and make an impact through that process on the people and the culture.
And I think your point about listening is so important, because, and listening to a consistent message, right? So as executives are talking to middle management, they could say, oh, we're going to do all this around inclusion and diversity, making people feel belong. And then on the other side, they said, all that matters is your P&L, just get to the bottom line.
Yep.
So, I mean, the message, great listening, but the message has to be consistent, because I think they're smart people and they're going to say, however you're going to recognize, reward me, that's the way I'm going to behave.
What a rich conversation. And I feel obviously in this topic, one could spend hours sitting beside the fire, making s'mores by the fire and talking about this. Let me give you an opportunity to think about the research and maybe a point that you saw in it, or something that tweaked you, where you said, you know what, I really like to share this. Maybe it's even a story. And maybe we can, to conclude, hear some of the final thoughts you might have on our research, on the work that you do, and your organization's journey.
I think organizations need to start having the conversation around the change and this necessity of the change, because we need to have the courage to fight the change and be the change. And a lot of organizations are talking about the change, but not doing anything. So be the change, see the change, and go out there and actually do it. The other thing too is my father has taught me something, and I live it every day. as you learn and earn and return everything in life, life owes us nothing. Life is an opportunity for us to go out there and make the best out of it, to go inspire and impact people. And it's our job to make sure we're giving the best out of the life we're giving as leaders, as people, to impact on organization, community, and people, period.
And just to build on something that Rola said earlier about it being every person's job, I love the concept around the bubble. And so even if you're in an organization where you may feel it's not going exactly as you would like it to do, you can create your own bubble and make a difference for those individuals on your team. I think that could be very powerful.
And so I'm going to say to both Rola and Mary Lou, you two have both inspired me today. And it's been a real delight to spend some time with you in front of our roaring fire. You can see the irony. I keep dragging out this analogy perhaps a little bit too long, but it's been a delight to speak with you this morning. Thank you so much for your partnership and your commitment and dedication to Triac and the immigrant community.
Same to you and your team for all the amazing work you continue to do and give people opportunity to succeed.
What she said.
Yeah, exactly.
Ditto.
Thank
Ditto.
you.